Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. Thank you for hanging around. You obviously want to hear from our guest this week. Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Calikim is a backyard organic gardener dedicated to helping you grow your own healthy, delicious vegetables in a quick, simple, and inexpensive way that fits into your hectic lifestyle. She lives in Southern California with her husband, Jerry, and their children, and they work as a team to produce garden content that helps people all over the world grow organic vegetables. Welcome to the program, Kim.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your day, a very busy schedule, to join Holly and me and all of our listeners across the country to enlighten us and provide some of your garden knowledge with all of us.
You are welcome. I am thrilled to be here and share how wonderful it is to grow an organic vegetable garden.
Well, let's start from the very beginning. You're a new author. We'll talk about your book momentarily, but you have a very successful YouTube channel. And where did that come from? Did you have a background in gardening, or where did this whole let's start a YouTube channel thing come from?
Sure. Well, my husband, Jerry, is actually a videographer on the side, and I love to garden. And he and his friends decided one day they wanted to try and make a viral video. So he asked me, Kim, what are you doing? And I happened to be spreading some compost around some herbs in my garden. So he said, okay, I'm going to come out and film you, and you just start talking about what you're doing and explaining about composting. So that's exactly what we did, and we uploaded that as our very first video. And people started watching and then asking for more videos. They wanted some videos on seed starting and growing tomatoes and making your own tomato cages and things like that. So we started doing a little bit of research, because at that time I was a fairly new gardener. So we started doing some research and then asking people in our videos if they could give us some ideas and tips and tricks. And then we ended up trying those things in future videos. And people really enjoyed that sense of community. And that's basically how our YouTube channel started.
Well, we talk to people every week and multiple years behind these microphones, and we ask similar questions, and it's all very similar to what you described. It wasn't something that was planned out for years, and here's what we're going to... You just kind of fell into it, or life presented it to you, and it was a very good thing that life gave you.
Absolutely. And Jerry loves making videos. I love teaching people. And over time, as our YouTube channel grew, we decided that it was a good combination of skills to really put our efforts into teaching people how to grow vegetables. And it's very rewarding.
And much like Holly and I, you get to do that with somebody you love and somebody, you can bond with.
Absolutely.
Now, what is one of the most common questions you get from gardeners of all levels?
Well, without a doubt, it's about watering. How do I water my vegetables? How much water do I give my vegetables? When do I water? I think that's the area where most gardeners get tripped up and are really confused about. So, I wish there was a magic answer to that question. But as you well know, Joey and Holly, it's so dependent on so many different factors: the temperature, how much rain you get, the type of soil you use, the type of vegetable you're growing. So I like to give some really basic principles. In fact, I dedicated a whole chapter to it in my book. But basically, the quick and simple is you really need to check your garden daily. If you have a moisture meter, that's always handy, but you don't have to. You can use your finger as a moisture meter. And depending on the type of rain that you've gotten or haven't gotten, just put your finger down into the soil, check to see if it's wet. And if it's dry, you need to water. If it's wet, you don't need to water. And over time, it's kind of a trial and error process. You kind of learn what your garden needs based on the weather and the type of soil that you have.
And I'm sure you're just like Holly and me. We've all killed many, many plants thinking we were doing the right thing, whether not watering or watering too much. And we've learned over the years what works best for certain plants.
Absolutely. We tend to overlove our plants, which I think all gardeners do. And then you learn over time that you can back off with certain plants, and then certain plants need water. And before you know it, you're watering like a pro, and you're just learning as you go. And if you kill a few plants in the process, then it's no big deal.
Definitely. Now, you have a lot of DIY home cleaning recipes or ideas. What is one of your favorites and why?
One of my favorites is an all-purpose cleaner, and I feel like that's really important these days that we want to keep our surfaces and countertops really clean. It's super easy to make. It's basically just equal parts of rubbing alcohol and water and a couple of tablespoons of vinegar. Super easy, super basic. You save a ton of money and it gets your surfaces. You can even use it for your windows and your mirrors. It gets everything super clean. As long as you can find rubbing alcohol, which seems to be in short supply these days too.
Always something to keep the house clean, not only for yourself, but for your family and for your pets.
Absolutely, and it doesn't use any harsh chemicals, so it's good all the way around.
Now, you're in Southern California. We're in the north here in Wisconsin. We've got people listening all over the country and the world. What we all deal with pests in some form or fashion in the garden. What are some ways in which you have found to protect your plants from common pests?
Well, I think the biggest thing is really make sure that you have really good, healthy soil. And that's the first place I like to start with anything in my garden. And I use a lot of compost in my soil to really, help the microbial activity. And I love to use worm castings too, which, as you well know, that's, nature's best fertilizer. And it really does help bring in the beneficial bacteria and microbes. And then one really simple way that I like to, if I do notice pests on my plants, is just spray them, give them a good spray with water, knock those pests off, and really just keep an eye on things. Again, check in your garden daily. Maintenance is always the best cure. Prevention is always the best cure. So try and prevent a problem before it even starts so it doesn't get too out of hand.
Proactive instead of reactive. The problem seems to be less intense if you can follow that procedure.
Absolutely.
Now, we all have a plant that we can't grow. Holly and I can't grow broccoli or cauliflower for nothing. Is there a plant that you struggle with that either you're continuing to try to grow or you've just said, hey, this is just something we can't grow in my backyard and I'm moving on?
Yeah, I hear you on that one. I struggle with broccoli and cauliflower too because of the heat that we have here, even in the wintertime. But I still do try every year. But one thing I've pretty much given up on is spinach. We also have a really hard time growing spinach because of our fluctuating temperatures. The wintertime is the best time for us to grow a cool weather vegetable like spinach, but it takes longer to germinate. I just tend to get really impatient with it. And then once it finally does start to grow, we'll get a couple days hot spell, it'll bolt. So for me, I like to really put my resources on things that are going to be easy for me to grow. We all have limited resources, limited time, and spinach is one of those things that I've just pretty much said, I'm just not going to grow it anymore. I have other things I love to grow more and have kind of just crossed that one off my list for now.
That definitely makes sense. Now, you have a new book. It's called Organic Gardening for Everyone. What is the book about, and is there a favorite tip in that book?
Sure. Yeah, I wrote the book just because I wanted people to feel like anyone can grow a garden. It's not something that's rocket science. With a few little skills, a few quick, simple, inexpensive tips, you can get out there, plant a vegetable garden, and it's even more important now in what the world is going through. So it really just takes people by the hand, walks them through very simple step-by-step instructions of how to grow a garden from start to finish, including starting from seeds indoors, getting your plants acclimated, and then getting them transplanted out in the garden, including watering, setting up garden beds, installing drip irrigation if you so choose to. But one thing I really emphasize in the book and like to tell new gardeners is start simple and then expand later. That's really my garden motto. So start very simple with one or two vegetables. The easiest one to grow is lettuce. Start with a little container. Grow yourself some lettuce. Get yourself a few skills. You get some confidence. And then you'll be hooked once you taste that first harvest. As you know, homegrown vegetables are so amazing in their flavor. And then you'll want to grow more and expand your garden into other vegetables.
Well, you bring up a good point. Start with one or two vegetables. And what we were talking about in the first segment is some gardeners are like, well, if I can't grow a big garden, it's not worth doing. You do not have acreages in your backyard. You've got a moderately, I would say, average to small backyard, but you're able to pack a lot of stuff in that garden and you're able to do it very successfully.
Absolutely. And even if you don't have a yard, and a lot of people are growing on a deck or a patio or a balcony in an apartment, there is a lot that you can pack into a small space. We dedicated a whole garden series to small space gardening. And just grab yourself a couple 5-gallon containers, a couple little, fabric raised beds. I use a lot of fabric containers, and plant yourself some salad vegetables and a couple of tomatoes and things like that. And you're a gardener. You've got a garden.
Well, Kim, we greatly appreciate you. How can people find your YouTube channel, your website, get a hold of your book? Where can we all go for that?
Well, my website is calikimgardenandhome.com, and I do carry seed collections. You can find my book on there, and you can find me on Calikim pretty much on all social media, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook.
Well, Calikim, we greatly appreciate you taking time not only to share your knowledge with Holly and myself, but all of our listeners, and it's been a great conversation to have with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Joey and Holly.
Well, thank you very much.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.